Hey, I'm going to show you how to change the coolant on your E36. This is a 98 M3, and I'm also going to show you the procedure I've put together on how to properly burp the cooling system. I experienced a lot of trouble for a long time trying to get all the air bubbles out of the system, and between some of my resources like the Pelican 101 performance projects and the Bentley service manual, recommend everyone getting those too. Put together my own little procedure with a foolproof way of burping all the bubbles out of your cooling system. So let me run through and show you what you're going to need to do this project properly. First thing, I really recommend getting some sort of ramps to raise the front of the car up as high as you can. Make sure they are rated to actually support the weight of your car. You don't want your car to fall on you. That would be bad. Second thing, this is a messy process, so get yourself a couple catch cans to catch everything. Coolant is poisonous, so you don't want that going down the drain or having any small animals drink it, because they will probably die. Next, you will want some distilled water, tap water, anything else, mineral water won't work because that'll leave deposits in your system. So it's got to be distilled. You will want some of the blue BMW coolant. It comes undiluted, which is why you need the distilled water to mix it up to a 50-50 mix. I recommend buying it by the gallon because it's a lot cheaper per ounce than buying these little quarts or liters, whatever they are. So what else do you need here? Recommend this is sunlight here. The drain plug for the bottom of the radiator. It comes with a new gasket and a little rubber O-ring in there. I recommend replacing that every time you do this. This is the bleed screw on the top of the overflow tank. Recommend replacing that as well. All these things are cheap. And lastly, you're going to want the little crush gasket guy there for the drain plug on the engine block. In terms of tools, it's a pretty simple job. I found that a 19mm crow's foot wrench here on a short little extension. I'm using my 3/8 ratchet here. Is the best way to loosen the drain plug on the block. It's pretty tight in there between the exhaust manifolds and everything, so you have to get a little creative. You're going to want a couple Phillips head screwdrivers, and if you are undoing any of the coolant hoses like I recommend you do, get a little, what is this, a 6mm to undo the hose clamps. If yours have been replaced, they may be a different size, so check on that. So with that all said, I think I can pull the car up on the ramps and start draining the coolant, and I'll see what I can show you going forward here. Obviously, when you drain the coolant, you do not want the coolant to be hot or the system to be pressurized. So when you pull the car into the ramps, make sure you only have it on for the minimum amount of time. And so before you drain the coolant, you want to go in the car and turn the climate control to maximum temperature, the fan speed to the lowest fan speed while still being on, and then turn the ignition to on without starting the engine. Obviously you don't want the engine running when you're draining your coolant. So I'm going to do that now, and we'll go to the next step. Some other little tips to make the draining go faster are to remove the overflow tank cap and the bleeder screw from the tank. And also, just so we're clear, you want to remember to set your whatever temperature vent selector thing to hot to make sure it's going to be blowing out hot air. Climate control to maximum temperature and minimum fan speed. You can turn on as many of those as you like. And so now with all this on and open, this will allow the coolant to drain out of the heater core. I will begin the draining process. Alright, so with all the coolant drained from the block, it having made a giant mess, kind of goes wherever it wants to go, so the more drain pans you can get under there to catch this stuff, the better. Now that's all drained, going to reinstall the drain plug with the new aluminum little gasket guy in there to help it seal, and torque that guy up to 18 foot-pounds. Then we move on to drain the radiator. Alright, here we are under the car, and we are going to be loosening this guy here, the blue. That is the drain for your radiator. So again, get your drip pans in place and get ready to get dirty, because this is a messy process. So before you start feeling coolant, go back into the car, find your key, of course I'm getting a coolant level low, so we want the HVAC on again so that can fill up the heater core. So leave everything just like that. And we are now going to fill up the block directly. So if you haven't already done so, remove the upper radiator hose from the radiator and start pouring your 50/50 BMW coolant and distilled water mix in there. And once it starts getting to the top, you're going to flip it around and then fill the radiator directly. So I'll show you that next. Alright, so I was able to get about a gallon and a half of coolant straight into the engine block. I should have mentioned earlier, having a funnel like this will make your life a lot easier and cleaner, so definitely recommend using one. So now I'm going to reattach the hose to the top of the radiator, remove it from the thermostat housing, and then I'm going to fill up the radiator directly. Alright, so I was able to get a little less than half a gallon directly into the radiator. So once that starts coming out of the thermostat housing, you can stop pouring and reconnect the hose, making sure to tighten it down properly on both ends. And then we are ready to go for the expansion tank. So what you're going to want to make sure you have, still have the bleed cap removed, and we're going to use the funnel to fill directly into the overflow tank. And so what you're going to want to do is you keep pouring coolant in there until no air bubbles come out of the bleeder screw location. Just keep pouring coolant, because more bubbles will come out. That's just kind of the way it goes. It's a messy process. You're going to waste a lot of coolant, but that's just what you do. I also like to squeeze both radiator hoses a few times. If the level drops in the expansion tank, keep pouring coolant in until absolutely no bubbles come out of that bleeder screw location. So once you finally get to that spot where no air bubbles are coming out of the bleeder screw, reinstall the bleeder screw, but keep the main cap off. I repeat, reinstall the bleeder screw, but keep the main cap off. After that, we're going to turn the engine on, so we'll come back when we are at that stage. Alright, so the bleeder screw location was pouring out just coolant with no air bubbles, so it was time to reinstall the bleeder screw, leave the main cap off, and we are ready to go turn the car on. Make sure everything else is buttoned up, there are no leaks before you do so. So let's get this going. fan speed up a little bit, but we just want to make sure the vent selector is still on hot and you have max temperature here. So let's see what the car is doing. So now we kind of wait around for a while. What I like to do is I use the torque app on my phone with an OBD2 Bluetooth dongle to measure or keep track of the coolant temperature during this process. The gauge on your dash is pretty much useless. So what I like to do is so once the coolant reaches about 150 degrees, I will rev the engine to 3,000 or 4,000 RPM and hold it there for at least 10 seconds. In the past, when I had trouble, I was only revving it to 2,000 RPM for shorter bursts, maybe 5 seconds. And doing it that way, I still had air pockets in the system. So I found revving the engine to a higher RPM and holding it there for a little longer really helps get rid of every single last little air pocket in the system. So it's going to take a while for it to warm up. So just keep an eye on your temperature. Hopefully you have something on your phone that's better than the dummy gauge on your dash. And we'll come back when we're doing that. Should also note that it is expected to have coolant just kind of slowly overflowing your expansion tank during this whole process. That's normal. Do not add additional coolant to your system during this burping process. It's just going to waste coolant and take up more time. You do not need to add additional coolant during the burping process. So just let this thing keep overflowing like that. It's going to make a mess. Make sure you have your drip pan under it. And keep an eye on that coolant gauge for when it gets to about 150 degrees. Alright, so here we are. It's been about 5 minutes. Coolant has finally gotten above 150 degrees. If you don't have a dummy gauge, it's something like that first hash mark there after the blue. That's somewhere around 150, so that should be good enough. So what we do now, we're going to make a mess. Again, make sure you have your drip pan under there. We are just going to rev this engine and hold it at about 3,000 RPM to get that coolant moving through the system and hopefully bring any air pockets to the top. So that's what we're doing. And coolant came up to about 160. So now we got to let all those air bubbles out. So let's see if I can do these two things at once. We're going to come over here to the bleed screw. Oh, I can't. And let a bunch of coolant come out. Make sure you leave it off until all the air bubbles come out and it's just coolant. Then go ahead and tighten it back up. Make sure you never over tighten that thing. It's plastic on plastic and you can easily strip something. And if you look, probably won't be able to see it. You can see coolant moving around in the overflow tank, which is a good sign. Eventually the level will rise again and start to overflow once the coolant gets even hotter. Again, what I like to do is careful to wash your hands for everything here, but squeeze the radiator hoses a couple times. That can help force any air pockets out. So now we wait a little bit, and we're going to repeat that process probably 2 more times, and then we'll check back. Alright, so I had to repeat the revving and burping process about 5 times before I stopped getting air bubbles coming out through the bleeder screw. So now you're pretty close to being done. You do want to check on a couple things though. First is you want to make sure the upper and lower radiator hoses both have heat. The top one heats up first. It's really the lower one you're interested in. When the lower one finally starts to get hot, that verifies that the thermostat is working and opening. And it seems like to really get all the air pockets out, you want that thermostat to be opening to allow more of the air out of the block come up through the bleeder screw. So the next thing you do is go inside the car. You want to set the vents for the ones to blow out your face there, and verify you've got heat coming out of the vents. That verifies the heater core is full of coolant. And what else can we do? Yeah, we can't really see it. Sometimes you can look in the expansion tank for flow, for proof that the water pump flow is strong. But if you've got heat down here on your lower radiator hose, and obviously you're going to have it up here on the top one, and you've got heat inside the cabin, then you should probably be good to go. I usually like to wait around until the coolant hits about 205. That's when my electric fan is triggered to come on. And just as a note, if you have the stock temperature thermostat, that is set to open at 195 degrees. And it can take a while for your coolant to get 195 degrees if you're just sitting around not driving. So that's where the digital app like Torque will really come in handy. So you make sure you continue this process until the thermostat's opening. So I haven't quite gotten up to 205 yet, so I'm going to wait. But once you're all done, reinstall the cap on the overflow tank. Take the car out for a quick drive. Driving it a little hard, maybe getting the revs up, and then come home and park it. The following day you're going to want to check the expansion tank for proper level and add coolant if needed. I like to then open the bleed screw to let any air out, and then I do this a couple more times over the next couple days until the level in the tank stabilizes and no more air comes out of the bleed screw. Obviously this step or this whole procedure needs to be done when the car is at ambient cool temperature, not when it's hot, or else you're going to have a bad time. So I think that is all for now. I'll see if I have any more thoughts and add them later. Hey guys, just to add one last tip there. When you are done, please put all the coolant into a bucket and transfer that to an appropriate facility, whether that's a county dump. Most auto parts stores, around here at least, do not accept it, so I have to take mine to the dump, but please don't just pour it down the drain. And what else? I guess that's it for now, but I'm sure I'll think of something later.